Daryl Morey took the Philly radio to discuss the Sixers offseason, the James Harden trade situation, and a bunch more. We'll break all of it down right here on Philly Take with RB.
Perfect.
What is going on, everybody? RB here. Welcome into the show. Like always, hit the like button if you enjoy the content. Be sure to subscribe, and as always, ring that bell down below. That way you don't miss any of the coverage. Today we are back, and Daryl Morey decided to do one of his famous hits where he goes on the radio and talks openly about everything, right? Did it during the Ben Simmons situation. He's done it a few times in between, and here he is going on the radio, 97.5 The Fanatic with Anthony Gargano on the midday show, to essentially just talk about everything that has happened and what he plans to do going forward here in the future. I will ask the people out there, if you have listened to the interview or if you stay tuned for the rest of this video, drop your comments down below. What do you think? Are you more or less confident in Daryl Morey and the Sixers after hearing what he had to say today on the radio? Give me your thoughts. But before we jump right into all of it, shout out to our sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp, the world's largest therapy service. I'm sure anybody out there listening right now has either gone through or knows somebody who has gone through a mental health experience. Personally, I have gone through some very tough situations, maybe the death of a family member or things like that, where I wasn't feeling the best and I needed somebody to reach out to, and just, going to therapy can maybe save somebody's life, right? And, anybody out there may not be comfortable enough to reach out. So if you know somebody out there, BetterHelp is a great place to be able to do that. I never knew about such an easy, accessible outlet like BetterHelp. It's remote, and their mission is to make therapy more affordable, and it makes finding a therapist so much easier because it's online and it only takes a few clicks. All you have to do is answer a few questions, and BetterHelp can match you or someone you know with a professional therapist with just in a few days. Then you can talk to that therapist, via text, call, chat, video call, whatever, and you can message them at any time to stay updated. And if the therapist is not the right fit, you can then switch to a new therapist for free without having to stress about insurance and, all those little things that go into it. So if you are struggling or you know somebody out there that is, it is never a bad thing to reach out for help. So consider online therapy. Go down to the description, click the link, go to betterhelp.com and get 10% off of your first month by clicking that link, betterhelp.com/PhillyTake. All right, man, let's get into it. So as I mentioned, Daryl Morey goes on the radio, and I will start pretty much with a brief overview because I kind of took notes via my Twitter. If you guys are not following me on there at RB Philly Take, definitely recommend that you do that. But here was my overarching takeaway from Daryl Morey's radio interview today. To be honest with you, it was kind of underwhelming. Like, it feels like they don't really have a concrete plan right now. And I will say a lot of what he had to say, not saying he watches this show or anything, maybe he does, but it really echoed a lot that we have hit on here in the last couple of weeks. So number one, this is going to be a long process. It's going to be drawn out. It could get ugly. It feels like the Sixers are stuck. They haven't done much, and they're not going to do much until a Harden trade happens. We'll talk about the specifics of what he had to say about that in just a second. But Daryl Morey essentially gave some hints that the Sixers are not going to budge, right? What did I say? Harden is not going to come back because he's not happy. Once Harden is unhappy, he's disgruntled, he's going to do his thing. And Daryl Morey did confirm that he wants a trade. But Daryl Morey also said, we're not budging. And it almost feels like we are trending towards what I said a couple weeks ago. A gap year leading in to 2024 where you accumulate a lot of cap space and maybe get some more assets, let some contracts expire, and then you try to build around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. But the one problem with that has always been, how do you sell that vision to Joel Embiid, who is then 1 year older, hopefully not, but may have more injuries at that point and is just, using years here of his prop. So how do you sell that vision? That was my overall takeaway, though. Like, it just felt like they are in a similar situation to the Ben Simmons situation, if I'm being completely honest. Now, in terms of the Harden situation, Daryl Morey came right out and he confirmed the request, right? He said that, James is a great player. He's a top 75 player, but he wants to be elsewhere. But here is the important part. It is exactly what Kyle Neubeck reported yesterday that we talked about here on the show. And it's exactly what I've said that I've felt for the last couple of weeks. Daryl Morey is only going to move James Harden if he gets, one, a star player in return, or two, a bundle of draft picks that can be used to then flip into a star player. So if the Sixers go out and they trade him to the Clippers, they have to get a ton of draft picks and then use those to go get another guy. It doesn't make sense, right? Daryl Morey never expected James Harden to want to leave, right? Like, obviously there was some contract things there, but I don't think Morey, given his friendship with James, which now it kind of seems like that is gone, right? That seems like that bridge is burned, but he never expected him to just say, all right, trade me. And that is where the Sixers are at. And I'm not going to say whose fault it is, but it's kind of tough from both sides of it if you think about it. But James was never getting that long of a contract. And Daryl Morey, you know, kind of stands his ground here already. On the radio, he says, if the Sixers cannot get one of those two things, either a star or a bundle of draft picks, they, quote, simply will not do the trade. So he's willing to wait. He's willing to wait. James, you're going to be on a player option. If you want to earn that next contract, you're going to have to then suck it up and come back and try to show teams that you are wanting to work, work and earn that. But we've seen what's happened before in that situation. So it could get ugly. But yeah, man, Daryl's not going to budge. Nick Nurse came here. The Sixers are trying to win. They were very close to getting to the conference finals. I don't think they're ready to just tank it and say, blow it up. Here we go. But anyway, that's where we're at. And here is the comparison. Daryl Morey, what he said on Ben Simmons a couple years ago. He said this could take 4 years. People should buckle in. And today he says, if we don't get a very good player or something we could turn into that, then we're just not going to do it. Very similar in terms of what is being said around the situations. Now, Daryl Morey was then asked later on about what, would be the best fit next to a Maxey and Embiid, because he kept saying this running mate. He wants to get Embiid another running mate. He wants to get him another guy, right? They tried Simmons. They tried Harden. He wants to get him another guy. And the perfect fit, according to what that would look like from Daryl Morey, is, quote, a wing who can play both on and off the ball. A wing who can play on and off the ball. Nothing that the Sixers have. They have no wings. They have no wings. We'll talk about the centers in a second. They have no wings. But you know who would really fit this prototype? It's this guy right here, who I've been preaching. Daryl, if you're watching this, man, this is the guy right here. You want a star? You want a guy who can play on and off the ball, who can complement Maxey and Embiid? Boom, there he is. There he is. Multiple years left on the deal. Go find a way to make it happen. That's what I would say. But it is funny how Daryl Morey said the Sixers need a wing and they don't have any. Daryl Morey sent a message to Sixer fans. He, throughout this interview, talked about how he was frustrated. He talked about, how he feels the passion. And even though he trolls, he did talk about Joel Embiid, saying that, he was trolling yesterday. And he was saying that, he has trolled and he just kind of messes around with the fans. But at the end of the day, he does understand the frustration. He understands where the fan base is at and why they're so on edge, as he should, right? He should definitely have a pulse. And at some point you do have to stop messing around. But his message is, quote, right now things are not looking perfect. At the end of the day, try not to focus on the roster too much in July. Hopefully this means that there will be pieces moving around. This is what a lot of people have said in the comments. But again, I'm not going to believe it until I see it, because right now, this is a huge swing and miss in this offseason so far. Daryl Morey harped on Pat Bev. I mean, he mentioned him about 8 times in this interview. He really thinks that Pat Bev is going to play into a huge role here in Philadelphia. He talked about some of the other pieces, the Jaden Springers. He even talked about Petrusev and some of these other guys that will hopefully get an opportunity under Nick Nurse. I don't think he was really saying it as a slight to Doc, but just saying, until we can make more moves, we have these guys here. You have to play them, and I do agree with that. Daryl Morey says that bringing back a lot of the depth that the Sixers lost in free agency, the Shakes, the George Niangs, etc., quote, would have hurt this team down the road. He talked a lot about the new CBA, and I do understand, which kind of makes me feel like, again, they're trending towards 24. He essentially said that the Sixers can have hopefully the most cap space in the league, and that they're going to have to find ways to maneuver around the cap going forward, which is smart. He said that he wants to win now, but also be competitive for years to go. And I understand that. I definitely understand that. But, Sixer fans are on edge, right? You have to kind of go in one direction. And I think they're really just waiting to see, how this whole Harden situation plays over. But he did stress about the future as well. The ton of cap space in 24 and, the Maxey and Embiid. He said Maxey could potentially be an all-star, within a couple of years. And maybe that's what they're going for. And maybe if it doesn't work out, after this year or next year, maybe then they blow it up. But is it too late to do that at that point? A lot of questions for this team. He talked about the centers. He says that it is all fun that we have 25 centers, but the reality is that these are multi-positional guys who are versatile. I didn't buy one thing that Daryl was saying about this. You know, he was talking about Mo Bamba and Trez and how these guys are going to fit in different roles and how Nick Nurse is like going over all these defensive coverages and, you know, how these guys are going to fit. I don't buy it. I don't really buy it at all. I don't think you can hold 5 centers on the team. He was, again, joking about that, how he had trolled about it yesterday. Daryl, you got to get serious because this fan base is ticked off right now. He did mention, in terms of the James Harden deal, he was asked, you know, back in early 22, when the Sixers made the trade, about Tyrese Halliburton and other players. And Daryl said on the radio today that there were no other deals available. He said that they turned every rock. That was his words. And that they tried and that they looked into every possibility, but that essentially Harden was the only guy available. That was the only deal they could make. That kind of conflicts with some things he said before, so I don't know if I can really buy that 100%. But if true, and you take his word for face value, then, you know, maybe that's why I didn't do it. And I do think that Daryl had a pretty good deal at that time. Like, people want to use hindsight, but, you know, you go back and I just think that that was probably the best deal at the time. I don't think you were getting Tyrese Halliburton for Ben Simmons. I don't think anybody wanted Ben Simmons. But at the end of the day, you did throw in extra assets, and right now the Sixers are definitely stripped of those. So, you know, they got to wait and see how it plays out and hope they can get more back. But Daryl's saying that they didn't have any other deal on the table. So let me know what you think about that. And lastly, Daryl Morey just emphasized about getting better, getting more talent, continuing to focus. He kind of said that people have to be patient and wait to see what happens early in the season as well to see if they can make a move. But really, it's not going to settle over. It's not going to resolve until this Harden situation is fixed. And Daryl Morey did say this, though. Harden and Embiid are both a little hard to play with at times due to being so ball dominant. I thought that was an interesting tidbit that he put in there. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully he can get better complementary pieces. And at the end of the day, the Sixers team needs to add more talent. It did not feel like they had a concrete plan. It seems like Daryl Morey is ready to go on a standoff with James Harden. And at the end of the day, they're not going to see eye to eye. Harden wants to move on. That is confirmed at this point. But what will Daryl Morey do? Will he be able to find a trade partner? Will somebody become available? Will some other situation boil over in the near future, you know, to where the Sixers can go out and then try to negotiate a deal or maybe get a 3-team deal going? Who knows? One day at a time, see where it goes. Give me all your thoughts on this interview down below in the comment section. As always, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And with that being said, I will catch you all on the next one. Peace.